Okay, we're gonna start off this next part actually going back to what we already know how to do. The next part is factoring trinomials with a coefficient in the first term. And when you talk about a coefficient, hopefully you remember the coefficient is the number that's before the variable, and the first term, that should make it pretty self-explanatory, right? It's the very first part of the trinomial. Okay, so we're going to start off by just doing some simple multiplication that you guys worked on last unit. So we're going to take this problem, 2x plus 5 times 3x plus 4. And it starts really at the bottom of page 12, but I want you to go ahead and copy this over to the top of page 13 in your notes, and then work it out. The answer is already there at the top of page 13, but I want you to show your work next to it because we're going to need the work to kind of explain what we're doing here. Okay, so do that really quick and then see how we compare. Alright, so when we multiply this, right, we're doing our FOIL, right? So you do the first two terms first. Okay, 2x times 3x, and you end up with 6x squared. Okay, then the next part, we're going to do the outers, right? So the very first one and the very last one, that's the outer. You get 2x times 4, and you end up with 8x. Then you do the two inner terms, and you get 5 times 3x, and that'll give you plus 15x. And then finally, you do the last two, or the very last in both sets, right? 5 times 4 will give you 20. Okay, and then what you do is you take the middle terms and you add them together, right? So if you multiply the outers together and the inners together, you then add those together and you get the middle term, right? So you end up with 23x in the middle, and we have 6x squared at the front and plus 20 at the end. Okay, and now here's the things that you need to realize. Okay, and we've already talked about them kind of already because we did it in the last few lessons. But the thing you need to realize is, first of all, the last term, right, you get by multiplying the last in both of the parentheses. The first term you get by multiplying the first in each parenthesis together. Okay, and then the important part that you need to know here is this middle part. Okay, the middle part you get by taking the outer ones and the inner ones and multiplying them together first, and then adding them together, and it ends up being the middle term. Okay, and that's the harder part when you come to this part of factoring trinomials, because originally, right, we just found the factors of the last term and then just put them together and you ended up getting the middle. Well, now you got factors of both the first and the last term, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And we'll show you how this goes as we move along. Okay, if we keep working our way down page 13, the next part talks about factoring trinomials. Okay, and this is where we're kind of getting into what we're doing. Now, the few things that we know already, right? If you multiply the first term of each parenthesis times itself, times each other, you're going to end up with the first term, right? Okay, so what you got to do is, first of all, we know the x's, okay, we did that before, but the blank part is where numbers are going to go. And whatever the factors are of the very first coefficient, the a, if you multiply the factors, the numbers in the very first part, those two numbers multiplied together will give you a. Okay. When you talk about the last two, okay, or the last term, okay, if you multiply the two numbers together in the last part of each binomial, you'll get the C. You'll get the blank. When you multiply the blanks together, you'll end up with C. Okay. Now the tricky part again comes to the last part here. What you're going to do to get the middle term is you're going to multiply the outer ones together, and you're going to multiply the inner ones together, and then when you add those two together, you're going to end up with the middle term. Okay, so it gets a little tricky because it's a factor of each one of the first and the last multiplied together will give you that middle term. Okay, now that looks a little messy. Hopefully it's going to make some sense as we start to do some of these. And they get to be pretty difficult, so you got to make sure you're really kind of paying attention and understanding what we're doing. So as we get down the middle of page 13, they give us the problem 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. Okay? And now they worked it out really simply for us in that the factors of the first coefficient are simple, right? Well, what multiplies to be 3? You only have 1 times 3, okay? But it's positive, so you could also do -1 times -3, right? So don't forget that. Now, the factors of the last term, you have 1 times 2, or you have -1 times -2, because it's positive again, right? Now, here's the thing now. Okay, now we're going to go towards the answer. Okay, now right away you should know that the first term is going to be going to have an x in it, so we should put our x in right away. Okay, now here's the cool part. Okay, you know it's going to be positive, and you know that when you add these two together, it's going to be positive. So since both of those are positive, we can go ahead and put pluses in both spots. Okay, makes it simple. Now if this was negative like before, okay, when we talked about this before, if that was negative, you could make them both negatives, right? Because you need a positive last term and negative on the middle. Alright, now here's the deal. We have to find a way, okay, to multiply these numbers together where when you put them together, you're going to end up with 5. Okay, so you could multiply the different ways we could multiply these together, right? We can do 1 times 1, so you're going to pick 1 from each term. So you can do 1 times 1, okay, or we could do 1 times 2, okay, and then you do the 3, so 3 times whichever one's left over, right? So let's go ahead and look at it this way. So what if we did, we have 1 and 3 from the first coefficient, right? And we have 2 and 1 from the second coefficient. And if we were to multiply those together, you end up with 2 and you end up with 3. And if you add those together, you get 5. So that works out really well. So here's the trick now, right? Ready? We're going to put our 1 and our 3 in for our first terms. Okay? Now, what you need to do now is you need to place the 2 and the 1 in the correct spots so that the 2, when you multiply the outer together, multiplies by the 1. Okay? And then the inner is going to be the 3 times 1 also. Okay? And now if you check your work, okay, you multiply these back together. When you multiply them back together, you get, oh, sorry, wrong button. You get 1x times 3x, that gives you 3x squared. And then you do 1x times 2 and you get plus 2x. You do 1 times 3x, you get plus 3x. And you get 1 times 2, which gives you 2. You combine them together, 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. Okay, so hopefully you saw there what we kind of did. We did, when we put the outers together and the inners together, they had to multiply to be this 2x and 3x. Okay, we're going to do a bunch of these here. Sometimes you just kind of have to guess and check. Okay, unfortunately, that's just the way this kind of works. It's a little hard. Once you finally kind of catch on to this, it goes pretty quick. But until that point, it just takes a lot of trial and error. You got to give it a shot and hope it works, and then give it a different shot and hope it works. Okay. All right. So at the bottom of page 13, they give us this example: 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. Okay. So that's at the very bottom of page 13, and then it moves over to page 14. Okay. Now, so the first thing we need to do is we need to find the factors of 2. Well, that makes it simple. It's 1 times 2. Okay, so we have 1 times 2 are the factors there. Now the factors of 12 could be a number of different things. Okay, and actually we have negative 12, so here's the deal. You got to make one of them be positive and one of them be negative, right? So we could have negative 2 times positive 6. You could have 2 times negative 6. You could have negative 3 times 4. You could have 3 times negative 4. You could have negative 1 times 12, and you can have 1 times negative 12. So these are all different combinations that you could use to get that negative 12, right? Now here's the trick. You have to go through and you have to be able to pick which set will multiply with the 2 and the 1 that when you put them together after you multiply are going to add up to be 5. Okay? So here's the trick. Let's put our parentheses together. We know we're going to put our x in the beginning. Okay? And we know we have 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and put those in really quick because that's our only options are 1 and 2. So let's look through and see if we can figure out what we can multiply times the 1 and 2 to give us 5. Okay? And it's got to be positive 5. Okay, well if I picked 1 and 2 for say like the first set here, so if I did 6 times 2 and 1 times negative 2, so let's try that. 1 times negative 2 is going to give us negative 2, and 6 times 2 will give us 12, and when you add those together that gives you 10. Okay, well that didn't help, so that's not going to work. Okay, well 2 and negative 6, okay, again it's going to be kind of the same idea, right? Well, I guess you could try the other way. You could do 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, so that gives you negative 2. So that's not going to work either. Okay, well, let's give it a shot here. We got negative 3 and 4. So let's do 1 times negative 3. That's going to be negative 3, and then 2 times 4 gives you 8, and that right there gives you positive 5, which we're looking for. We're looking for that positive 5. So that right there is the set that we're going to use. Okay. Now in order for that to happen, right, we need that 4 to multiply times the 2. So we want to make sure that that 2 multiplies times the 4. So we're going to give it plus 4 there because 2 and 4 is there. And then we're going to put the minus 3 in the end so that we get the 1 times the negative 3. Okay, and if we multiply this back together now, 1x times 2x is 2x squared. Okay, then 1x times negative 3 is negative 3x. 4 times 2x will give you plus 8x. And 4 times negative 3 will give you negative 12. Combine your like terms. 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. And that's what we started with, so we're good. Okay? Now, I know this might be super hard for you already, but I want you to give it a shot. We have some try these down here. Okay? Just give them a shot and then come on back. Okay, so let's take a look at this next one. 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. Okay, well, again, we kind of lucked out with this last term. We know it's 1 and 2. Okay? Now the first term, we can have 1 times 2 or we can have 2 times 3, right? Okay, now you want to look now and how are we going to multiply the factors here times the factors over here and then add them together to get 7. Okay, well if I kind of look, okay, if you do 2 times 2 that's 4, 1 times 1 that's 1, and so 4 and 1 is 5. That's not going to work. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, so I know that's not going to work either way. Okay, well, let's take a look at the other one. So if you do 2 times 2, that's 4, and 3 times 1, that's 3, and 4 plus 3 is 7. So that works out. Okay, so we're definitely going to use these two sets, and we figured out that we want the 2 to multiply times the 2 and the 3 to multiply times the 1. Okay, so we put our parentheses. We're going to do 2x and 3x, and then we want our 2 to multiply by the 2, so we want the 2 goes out here, right? So plus 2, and we want our 1 to be in there. Okay, if you multiply it back out, you get 6x squared, you get 4x, 3x, and 2, and that balances out. Alright, let's give it another shot. Let's check out this next one. So we have 8x squared plus 10x minus 3. Okay. Alright, so let's keep going here. So 3 again. Now again, this is going to be negative 3, so we want, one of them is going to be positive, one of them is going to be negative, right? So it can be one of those two ways. Okay. Now the 8, we have 1 times 8, we have 2 times 4, right? Okay, so how can we multiply this together to get 10? Okay, and because one of them is going to be a negative, we're going to end up having to subtract, right? Okay, so our numbers are going to subtract. So let's see, 8, we'll go 8 times 1 is 8, 1 times negative 3, so 8 and negative 3 is 5, that doesn't work. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24, oh that's way off. So we're going to get rid of that guy. So now we're left with 2 and 4. So how could we put this together that they put together to add to be 10? Well, if we look really quick, hopefully you're kind of catching on to this a little bit. 4 times 3 is 12, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, and 12 minus 2 is 10. So we're going to use the negative 1, 3, and the 2, 4. And we want the 4 and the 3 to multiply together, right? So let's put them in, 2x and 4x. And then we want the 4 and the 3 to multiply together, so we're going to put the 3 there, and we're going to put the minus 1 there. Okay? Hopefully you're kind of feeling this a little bit better now, and you can kind of move ahead. Hopefully you did see already. If you haven't, pause it right now and give it a shot. I'm going to move this up so I can work on the last one. So I have 6x squared plus 41x minus 7. Okay, so the 7, we have 1 and negative 7, or negative 1 and 7. And then 6 can be 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. Now, I'm going to look right here and see right away that I need 41. So the only way that I can get from 41 here is if I multiply this 6 and the 7 together, one of the two ways, to because that's going to give me 42. So that's the only way I know I'm going to get close. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off the 2 and the 3 because that's not going to get me close. Now I need a positive 42, right? I need a positive 41. So if I picked this one and I did 6 times negative 7, that's going to give me negative 42, so I know that can't be right. So let's cross that guy out. So I know I have 1 times 6 and negative 1 and 7. Okay, and I know that I want the 6 to multiply by the 7 to give me the 42, and 1 and negative 1 is negative 1, so 42 and negative 1 is 41, so that works. So I'm going to put 1x, okay, you can just put it as x if you want, and 6x, and again I want that 7 to multiply by the 6, so plus 7, and then I have my negative 1 there. Alright, so hopefully that's kind of making a little bit of sense to you. There's a bunch of worksheets that go along with this, so make sure you're getting plenty of practice. Khan Academy has the same thing. Okay, you need to make sure that you're really going through and getting lots of practice at this stuff. This is the only way you're going to get good at it.